All right, so thank you all for being here. My name is Ralvell Rogers II. As you know, I'm the founder, CEO of Ambitious Stories LLC, and today we are going to be celebrating the release of one Mr. Kevin Rabas and his book Improvise. Um, it's a poem. It's a collection of poems and sketches, and so we have a whole itinerary for this evening, and it's not going to be your typical reading where we kind of just have um, Kevin just read a bunch of his pieces. We'll try to incorporate more of like a conversation along with his pieces. So hopefully you all will enjoy that. And yeah, if you could do me a favor and just go ahead and mute yourselves now and try to keep yourself muted throughout, that'd be really helpful for us. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started here with the itinerary. I know I want to just start off by thanking everyone for being here again. And I also want to thank everyone who worked on the book. Who helped design it, who helped do the cover, do the photography and the editing. Sorry if I pronounced some of the names wrong, but I know Dave Leaker, Eric Sonokobe, and Lindsay Garcia were helpers in that sphere, and then also our contributors and reviewers for the book. For some of the blurbs that we had, it's Curtis Becker, Matt Cooper, Michael D. Graves, and Anthony Connolly. And I want to send a special shout out to Tracy Million Simmons and Meadowlark Books and the issue Employer State University English Modern Languages and Journalism department, especially Professor Amy Sage Webbaza, just for their continued support of Ambitious Stories ever since we started, and their continued support of me. And yeah, even before I left Emporia and left the Midwest, I always got big support from those in Emporia. So, Kevin, do you have a few words you want to say now?
Yeah, I feel so happy for Ralvell and his new press, and proud of his accomplishments. I should probably say just a couple of things about you right now, and just a few of the many things on your very prestigious and long resume of accomplishments. But one thing is, Ralvell was the first student recipient of the Presidential Award for Distinguished Service to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And he also started and presided over the Black Artists Club while at ESU. And he's one of our students who went on to a prestigious MFA in creative writing program, American University in Washington, D.C. And so we're so happy for you, and I'm happy to be a part of your process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate that. And like I said, you all have always been a great support of me and everything I've done while I was there and beyond. So forever is going to be that connection there. And so I guess the last thank you I just want to give to Kevin, back at Kevin, just for approaching me with this manuscript. I think that the process that we've kind of gone through has been pretty smooth, and I think we've been able to make a great product here, a great book. So, and it is available now on our website. I'm going to say that throughout. It's now available on our website, www.ambitiousstoriesllc.com. You can purchase it on there. And so, yeah, let's go ahead. I want to go ahead and try to introduce Kevin. As you know, if you're here, I mean, if you follow Kevin, Kevin has a long resume as well. Uh, so I'm gonna try to do a short version. Actually, the one that we have for the book here, just like a short bio, and it just goes like this. So we know that Kevin is the past poet laureate of Kansas from 2017 to 2019. He teaches at Emporia State University, where he leads the poetry and playwriting tracks. He has written 14 other books, including Lisa's Flying Electric Piano, a Kansas Notable Book and Nelson Poetry Book Award winner, He is the recipient of the Employer State President's and Liberal Arts and Sciences Awards for Research and Creativity, and he is the winner of the Langston Hughes Award for Poetry. His plays have been performed across Kansas and on both coasts. And so to start off, I kind of wanted to begin with like a rapid fire, um, some questions just for Kevin. Starting off, I remember when when I had my first class with you, Kevin, the poetry workshop class or the poetry class intro class. And I remember one of the first poems that we wrote, prompt that you gave us was the where you're from. Um, and so if you're a student or if you have been a student of Kevin's, you'll recognize this prompt, or if you've been in other programs, I'm sure. So I'm going to use this rapid fire opportunity here to kind of delve into your childhood a little bit and try to have some fun with a little bit. So let's start off. Um, what was like your cultural upbringing, like your day-to-day routine as a kid?
Well, I grew up in Shawnee, which is a suburb of Kansas City, and I like to play with other kids in the neighborhood. Baseball, football, basketball, and we would do that. And usually, when we got tired, we'd come in and play video games. Maybe, started with Pac-Man and moved on to things like Contra. And while we were tired, we would, lie around and button mash. And I also love to read. And my mom, who's on here, thanks for coming, Mom. Worked at newspapers and eventually was features editor at the Sun. And that's the two big papers during that time were the Sun and the Star. And my dad was in construction. He started as a carpenter and worked his way up to superintendent, which is essentially site boss. And so sometimes he'd lay out these big blueprints, and we would look at them with him, and when we were really little, play on them a little bit. So that's a little bit about growing up. But I did really love to read and write as well.
Okay, what was the first poem that you can recall ever writing?
Right. I don't remember the first poem, but I remember the first thing that I wrote that I liked. And it was about when my mom had gotten us, I think, a pillowcase and turned it into a cape. And we played Batman running down our short hall. And I wrote about that. I liked Batman at the time. Yeah. I'm trying to think who my favorite is right now. I don't know. I mean, there's so many now.
Yeah, there's so many. Okay, so what? I guess we have the first poem ever written. What was the first poem that you could recall ever reading?
Well, let's see.
Or you can say artist or poet if you can't recall a specific piece.
Right. I don't know. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica, like many families of that time, and there was a poetry section, and I remember reading that. I don't know. I mean, I liked Tennyson when I was in school because the long kind of story narratives quite a bit. But I'm trying to think when it comes to poetry. A lot of people, their favorite poem is "If," and that was one that I liked too. "High Flight," another popular poem. That one about flying airplanes was another. But it's hard to trace. I don't really remember exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That works. So I did kind of reference other like or specific writers, but can you recall like your favorite writer or even like artist or jazz musician growing up?
Right. In high school, I really liked and played in my car a lot of Thelonious Monk. I had some solo piano Monk tunes that I would play in my car. I also liked Chick Corea and Harry Connick during that time. Towards the end of high school, I read Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man and was really taken with that. So and would quote it some. So those were kind of some of the writers and jazz musicians that I liked in high school. Yeah.
So what and this may get a little messy or groggy, but what do you think was your favorite time to be alive, like when you were younger?
You know, I was kind of small. I grew about 7.5 inches between seventh and eighth grade. I grew quickly. I was small, and then I got to play basketball.
Mhm.
And not in high school, but I played in seventh or eighth grade for a team. And I really liked in middle school. About half an hour before school would start, my drum set was set up on the stage behind a curtain in the band room, and I would go in and practice. And I loved that time
Yeah.
every morning before school. So that's what I remember, playing drums, and people could hear me through the curtain there, and I guess cheer me on or whatever.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that.
Playing drums, it's crazy. It's crazy how it comes back around, right?
Yeah, yeah. I keep playing. I played out with Ramiro Miranda on violin yesterday on campus. We played a little presentation, and we played some Django Reinhardt and one Ellington tune too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So you've kind of dabbled into this last question I have, which is what are your hobbies? But you mentioned basketball, you've mentioned um, certain video games, you've mentioned obviously playing the drums. What are some hobbies that I guess people may not automatically assume that you kind of were into growing up?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I kind of stayed with jazz as one of my main things. I did a lot of listening and
Mhm.
playing. You know, I had two jazz bands that met in my basement when I was in high school, Deep Six and 51st Street Jazz Band. One of them I led, the other one I was just in. I like photography and film and have gotten into that again. And that the real kind of like the time when I really started to grow as a photographer happened in undergrad. I worked for the school paper, and one of the photographers there got me into it. He, lent me a camera at first, and then and taught me how to start seeing things. So I'm trying to think of a hobby that I have that people might not know. I don't know.
It's okay if there is. The thing is, you had like a lot of different things that you did. I mean, they're staples that you always go back to in your writing, but it's still quite a bit. Like if you think about it, so that works just fine. So now let's go ahead and delve deeper into the book. Um, just to start off, what was like the time span for this book? For some of the pieces that were written, I could tell obviously some of them were written or about like when you were younger, um, and even up until of recent years. But what would you say like the time span? Like what was the earliest time that you wrote some of these pieces, and what was the oldest?
I think early June 2019, we went on a trip to Yellowstone National Park, and here are the journals from
Oh
that.
wow.
And my parents took us, and Lisa and I and Elliot went, and my sister and her family went. And my sister had worked at Yellowstone years ago as an interpretive ranger, somebody who does walks and talks, and so she knew where to take us. We had our own guide.
Yeah.
And I wrote a lot about that. And I think I'm going to read one poem later, a short poem that's about that experience. So those are the earliest ones. Even though sometimes I'm looking back at earlier events, I think 2019 is where the earliest ones come from, up until mid to late 2020. And, I want to thank Lindsay Garcia for curating, editing, and doing some interior design on this. She selected many of these poems. She and I worked together to do that, but she did the initial selections. And we share a Google Doc, and I put stuff in there, and she and I kind of pick it over and find out what to do with it or what to leave in there. And I guess let rot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think based off of what you all curated and ended up sending to me, I thought it all flowed really well together. And I'm sure once everyone is able to get the book and read it, you'll see as well. But going back a little bit to the time span, and you said 2019. So I know for me, whenever I write certain pieces, or whether it's poems or short stories, sometimes it takes me a lot of time, and I'll have a life experience that I'm like, oh man, I know what to do with this piece now. Is that kind of, and this is for, all the other writers that are in here, and even readers who are just really interested in the writing process. How was that process for you? Was it similar, like where as far as like the editing went, as far as when you finally had it prepared the way that you envisioned it?
Right. I do write down a lot of things now. I don't use it all, but I do a lot. I do daily writing for a half an hour, or if I can get in 2 hours at most. And I go back and select things that I want to tool or work with, and the other things I just leave behind. And I will work on a piece, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then sometimes I'll still even abandon it after that.
Yeah.
But I come back to them, and then when we're working with a manuscript, often I'll go through and cut, a fourth or a fifth of the pieces in there, and then work on some of the other ones that have not been cut and keep going back to them. I think my process has gotten a little more improvisatory during the pandemic, where
Wait, did you say improvisatory?
yes, that's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I'll kind of sit down, and this is the session. I'm going to try to write things that come during this moment, and wherever my mind goes that I can latch onto something, I will put it down and then sort it out later, like put like pieces together, or abandon things that don't fit anywhere. But I will treat it like a first take session, where we're going to put something down, and it must be a record. It must be savable. It must be something ready for readers. So I've kind of charged myself with that task over the last year, and I have a lot of these kind of sketches that come from that process. And
Yeah.
so that's been kind of the thing.
Speaking of sketches, can you, for a lot of people, because I remember when I first got the manuscript, I was like, what are the sketches? I think I sent you an email, and I was like, I missed the drawings. Like, where are the drawings at? And so,
Right,
can
right.
you explain what the sketches are and why you decided to go with that approach for this manuscript?
Right. There are some things that that I'd written down that I didn't know. Is this prose? Is this poetry? Is it something else? And it's kind of like an artist penciling in something and sketching first, and then they might put paint on later. And so I was just sketching, and some of the sketches turned out better than something that I had, worked on and composed and fretted over. And so some of these kind of quickly made pieces that worked out. Now that doesn't mean I didn't revise them later, but often 80% of them came at first in a maddening session, and then and often they were shapeless, or they had a shape that was kind of like a block. And sometimes to keep the flow, I would just put right in the line break slash and keep going,
Yeah,
instead of lineating it on the page, because it was coming so quickly. And so you can relineate it in your head and put it out there, but I just put the slashes and keep going as quickly as I could, and still keep the sense of it. So it is a lot like sketching for a visual artist.
yeah, and it really reminds me of like kind of tapping on to the title, improvise. It almost sounds very like free flowing, and kind of like you're putting it all together, kind of on a whim. I mean, you say you go back and edit it, but the whole process seems like a when you have like a band, like a jazz band, you get your certain amount of time to have your solo. That's kind of what it feels like sometimes in some of the pieces. And so and to have the title be improvised during a time where we're kind of dealing with pandemics and other systemic and social justice issues. I really felt like the title itself was trying to speak to making a way out of nothing almost, um, freestyling, um, outside of the confines of typical or stereotypical writing forms. What was your intentions when it came to not just the title Improvise, but your approach to that theme for the entire collection?
Right. I mean, I think you've touched on some of the main strains running through the media and our lives in American society during this time and the time, a year slash year and a half before this. And so, um, I saw the George Floyd video and watched it over and over, and it hurt my heart, um, and COVID. So many of my friends who are musicians didn't have a job for a long time, or they had kind of a piecemeal improvised job where they would play on the internet and people would tip them through Venmo or something else like that.
Yeah.
And then people losing their lives or getting very sick during this time. That too. And often you couldn't go see that person because it was off limits to go and observe their passing.
Yeah.
And it just, just goes on and on. And so, in some ways I was cooped up at home experiencing these things through the internet. And so I was trying to get down what was happening. I do have one poem that I might read in a little bit here that melds some of the jazz listening and studies I was doing along with my meditations on the pandemic. And so these things started to become interrelated in that way, because I was doing some research at the Mar Sound Archives at UMKC, University of Missouri at Kansas City. I would drive back and forth maybe once every 2 months or so, but that became closed to visitors. And so I had to do my listening and studies at home. And so they became even more part of my daily life because I couldn't go and learn from folks because of the pandemic.
Right. Well, hey, let's get into some of the reading here. I know that there were some themes that I kind of took out while reading myself, and I'm sure many others will pick out. And one of them obviously related to the pandemic. So let's get some poems or some pieces from the collection related to the pandemic.
Okay, let me do the one that starts with jazz first, and then I'll do the porch sitting one. And so this is called Slop, which are both titles of Charles Mingus tunes, the great bassist, band leader, composer, etc. And this one has a series of those sections or sketches. And so I'll read a while and then I'll stop for a second. I'll say next, and the next one will come. So here I'm listening to Mingus and then thinking about my own experience as a young jazz drummer, and then thinking about the pandemic later. On track 6, the saxophonist comes in 4 bars early with the first few notes of the head. The drummer, not done, keeps soloing until he is. Mingus keeps the track, the take, presses it. Mistakes are also part of a tune. Here's the next one. Comes to an end of the head, Dennis ready to solo on sax, and I do one of those rolls where doubled 16th notes speed and turn into sextuplets, a kind of send-off, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I let go and roll. And I don't know if the Zoom will let us make sounds, but these won't be doubles, they'll be singles because I'm using my hands on the counter. But let's hear that roll. Did you hear anything?
I heard a little bit in the beginning. I didn't hear the roll all the way though.
Okay, well, just imagine it. Maybe if I speak it, that would be a way of doing it.
Improvise.
Yeah, hold on a second here. Someone is calling me, and I can't take the call. We'll just let that go. But it would be something like something like that. So We'll audible it here then. We'll do the audible as a drummer would call it. Okay, so there is that. Let's see. Give me just a second here. I'm gonna have to do something with my phone. Here's another one. This is all one piece, but here's the next sketch. They didn't write anything down, played the tune as dictated on piano, and played it one morning and every night until Mingus was satisfied and said, roll 'em. And the tune got captured and pressed. How we decades later can hear it, a thing played once that we can play over and over like a conversation, a Q&A a reporter captures that gets put in print on cheap paper, meant to be read once or not read at all and trashed. But somehow what Mingus heard and played, we hear ages later, and it's like listening to him practice alone in an apartment he's about to be thrown out of, the bass really only loud enough for him to hear. And then here's the next one. The tune I like to call as a teen was Well You Needn't. If you knew it, you'd love it. And kids rarely called it, rarely could play it. And here's the last one of this sequence. And that bug called up an end to live jazz for a season, and I turned to my recordings to listen, and it was as if I was in the city again, but now outside the streets were empty, like the clubs, and I prayed for the music that made me, saved me. There were so many ways of seeing the self, making a man, and jazz had been mine years and years ago. So that's that kind of, it shows what the sketches were like. I could read the porch sit one now if you would like. Yeah, okay. Lindsay called this Be Human About It, and a lot of the titles in this are in brackets because they're just placeholders. They don't really have titles, but we have to find a way to find them in the book. Some afternoons, a friend would come by in a surgical mask and sit 6 feet away at a patio chair on our front porch, and I too sit and we talk. Often I take a photo before we're through. We still get to talk this way and be human about it, not over the internet or over the phone. We see each other, know we're present. We are bodies and not just images on a screen, voices across a line. We're still here breathing and very much alive. So that one's one of those sketches about the pandemic.
Yeah, I really like that one because it's really indicative of what we're even doing right now.
Yes. Well, this is the poetry reading that we can have.
Exactly. And so I think that it's just really great to be able to find inspiration in I guess a creative spirit during these times, and so I thought that you flourished a lot throughout this collection in doing that, despite the topic at hand, and so that I really enjoyed that. And so I do want to go on to the next theme that I was kind of looking at, and before we go into that one, I want everyone to, because I know you don't have the book with you. And I kind of did that purposely because I wanted you all to be able to really witness the conversation that we're kind of having about the book, about Kevin, about life in general. And so while he's reading, it'd be really great if you just try to sometimes close your eyes or just imagine kind of the picture that Kevin's painting, because I think that's a great way to really engulf yourself in the pieces. So just keep that in mind. I know sometimes if you don't have the book, it can be like, well, what do I do with myself? But just use that nugget and try to see if you can do something with that. Now, the other thing we kind of touched on for the theme in the book, or for another theme in the book, is just injustice, and we had a lot of that this past year alone. And we know this is something that's been plaguing the world, especially this country, for many years. And so I thought you took a great leap in being able to touch on these things more and more throughout the collection. And so If you want, you can say a few words before, but you can go ahead and go into those next pieces as well.
Okay. Yeah. You know, the George Floyd video really broke me up some, and I wrote a number of poems about that murder. And this is one that I'm going to read. You know, I try to be involved if I can. I shot some video for Black Lives Matter Topeka a few weekends ago, and um, um, you know, we all are the allies we can be. And so one thing that I can do is write. And so this is one of those poems. It's called For George Floyd, and it comes with it starts with a kind of reference to a quote by Ezra Pound, one of those folks of high modernist who kind of um, uh, developed a new style in American letters. And this takes that quote another direction. Pound said, if you can, do it without metaphor. And we can, but the pain, that's a man that's on the ground. That's a neck, a head. That's a knee against him, a black man's face on the pavement. And that's him as he asks for your mercy. And he gets none. And he blacks out and dies on camera. How can we watch this and not know?
Yeah, yeah, that one really hits hard, right? Kevin, can you do me a favor and read that next one, Survivor on 107?
Sure,
And I
sure.
want to read that one because I think that, and you'll all hear it, but there's a bit of a lift towards the end, um, and it's kind of, I think, a great thing to have, and it comes right after that last one that Kevin read. So I like the flow of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Survivor. After days of rain, the sun, and birdsong again, and I almost forget about the knee to the neck, the cop killing the black man without reason, but I don't. I listen to Bird and think, this man too was beaten by cops and lived, and I'm glad he did.
Snap, snap, snaps. Feel free to chat in here and put your snaps in there too. I think there's ways you can do it on here, but I'm not too sure some of the reactions. But yeah, I really enjoyed those pieces, and that theme in particular, just the injustice theme, and I thought it was a different way, because I think a lot of your pieces, Kevin, like you have a sort of dark humor to them sometimes. That's kind of unexpected sometimes. At least for me, coming from you, I'm like, oh wow, Kevin, Kevin said that. It's always funny too, but I think that's part of it. So the injustice theme though allowed you to be able to really sit in that darkness in a way, um, and so the next theme, like I said, is the dark humor, that I was kind of picking up, um, and really just the humor in general, for a lot of these pieces. And I have one for you, but you can definitely read other ones if you want to. But you can go ahead and take it away for this too.
Okay. I'll do the one you mentioned. It's a little bit I'm probably not going to do it perfect justice because it has different voices, it's different characters, but I'll just read it. I'll read a bit and then I'll stop, and I'll read a bit and I'll stop. You know, we don't always get to be humorous in the classroom because, you know, not everybody thinks it's funny. So some stuff I save from my books and plays and such. So this one's called Buffalo Right by Our Car Window. And two of the people that gave the lines or versions of the lines are here, Lisa and my mom, Joyce. And so maybe I'll just read the names so that, you know, since they're here. So Lisa, they sure are big. Joyce, did he wink at you? Lisa, yeah, hey baby. Joyce, like my digs? And this is me. Want to make a minotaur? So that one's kind of like that. You know, you're out there in nature and you've got to say something. So yeah.
I thought that's so hilarious. I'm like, I was thinking, I was reading, I was like, Kevin would say something like that out of nowhere. I thought, and the thing is about the dark humor pieces and some of those more comedic pieces is I think they're splashed throughout, and that kind of goes with this next one, which is the relationships that I kind of see you go through through a lot of these pieces throughout the entire collection, and and you tap into that dark humor in those pieces too. And there are some again where you kind of sit in a little bit more. You have the reader sit into it, but I want to know like what is your, I don't want to say infatuation, 'cause I think that's a little much. What is your interest in writing these relationships with the girls and women that you've come across in your life? It comes up a lot in this collection. So what kind of inspired you to kind of just really go hard in that direction?
I guess in some ways I'm interested in connection, and so I write about times I connected with other people, times that we shared conversations, or you know, trips, going out into the Milo and walking around or something. Um, and so this idea of human connection is something that I'm fascinated with, and how we fall in and out of love with folks sometimes. And so there are a lot of love stories throughout my work, and I, in some ways, I think I'm haunted by things from the past that I knew when they're related to love.
Yeah.
And so there. I think the next one I'm going to read is this one about my first wife, and how that, one of the ways in which that ended. And so I don't know. I mean, sad songs, blues songs
Yeah.
are something that have a kind of energy, and so they can entertain, but also instruct, inspire, educate, etc. So, as a poet, I get to do these too. I'm not great at end rhyme, and so this is my version of that. So yeah.
Well, and I was going to say too that I think in a way when it comes to creative writing and just creativity in general, it's an outlet and it's a way for you to be able to process some of the things that you've experienced. It's like it's therapeutic, right? And so I mean I've been working on some grief poems recently, and it's been a really pleasurable way to work through those or through that process. And so I think that's something that um, you're kind of working through here, especially when it comes to like reading it out loud. So yeah, 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 I enjoyed those. So yeah, take it away.
Okay. I get home from the paper at 8 at night, and something seems not quite right. I can sense it in the air, like that feeling you get before someone breezes through a stop sign and hits you, smashes in the side of your car. You feel it, but it's too late. I open the door to our HUD townhouse, a nice place and cheap. My new wife and I have been living here for about a year while she finishes up school, and I write for the Junction City Daily Union, one town over. When the door swings open, it's darker than usual. None of the lights are on, not one lamp, and the shadows in the room fall longer. I snap on the light and look around. The first thing I notice is the couch is gone. So is most everything else, including my wife. So, probably some of us have had this story, in our narrative in our history, where you come home and somebody's gone, and so is their stuff. And so I had that story to tell.
It reminded me a lot of like the growing up. There was always the joke of when someone would go, they would say, they would ask somebody where they're going, like they're leaving the house, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to go see a man about a dog." And then they either don't come back or at all. They're going somewhere completely different. They just didn't want you to know about. So that kind of reminded me of that in this piece a little bit. Thank you for reading that, Kevin.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and then so the next thing on the itinerary I know I want to focus on its legacy. But before we get there, I do have a quick question I'm just interested in, now that you mentioned it earlier. In some of these pieces, you mentioned that you have brackets because there really aren't titles for them. Why? Why aren't there titles for some of these pieces?
Right. I think, they work better as a block or string of text without something above it telling what it's supposed to be called and saying this is the meaning, like a carefully wrapped candy wrapped up. Um, but we need to be able to find them in the book. And often we need a place marker in terms of what might this be about. And so often there are a line from the poem that point back to, if it were given a title, it might be this. I'm not, level 13 poem with that title maker, but I did want to have a way that we could find them. And I think they kind of worked. I mean, when I wrote them, I didn't write them with titles. We just had to puzzle over what to call them later. Part of this was probably the fragmentation of the pandemic. It's harder to think straight. It's harder to do a lot of things.
Awesome. A few tell the stories, the others read and watch, and for that they get little. But when you read and watch and listen, it's their dreams you see. Failed or unfulfilled. Oh, sorry. Failed or fulfilled. You see their insides. So give to an artist. See better dreams. So that's what's in the beginning of the book, for everyone, just to clue you in. And I thought that was a really inspiring start for the whole collection. And so while I was thinking about, I think I saw someone describe you as like the hardest working man in the business. And I'm like, man, this guy, he's Friday. It makes me want to step up what I'm doing. I'm like, I need to figure out how to get some more books because you work so hard. And so it's very inspiring. And so to go along with that epigraph there we have in the beginning, I want to start off this conversation of legacy. And to start off, why are you so supportive of like local publishers and writers? We're a small business. I know you've worked with Meadowlark and many others. Why are you so supportive of those small businesses?
I think this is where the future will be. So many of the small publishers in Kansas are new or newer, and if we invest in them now, there may be even greater things later. And so I this is a meme, so I don't know if it's true, but I heard that Ben Franklin gave Boston $2,000 but said you can't use it for 200 years, and then it was millions of dollars later. So this is my $2,000. So yeah.
Okay, that works. And so I mean, obviously, I really appreciate it. Always. But have you ever had like that opportunity to do like a big contract deal or like work with like a Penguin Random House or something like that? Has that ever come across your email, or have you ever won it? Have you ever sought it out?
It hasn't happened. I would probably, I'm sure I would be very tempted to say yes, and I might. It hasn't happened. It might happen more likely with a novel or something, or a
Yeah.
film or something. You never know. I did write the pilot of a jazz soap opera once, and folks were looking at that carefully. And then the woman who I was writing for brought along her little dog, sort of like in Legally Blonde, and the dog kind of broke that deal. It was unruly, and so it was foiled by a pet. So yeah.
Okay. What's the next question? Oh, so what's your favorite book of yours? This is kind of a fun question. What's your favorite book of yours that you've had published? This is a trick question because you should just say improvise. No, I'm kidding.
Right. I'm going to go with that. We'll let folks read it and decide that. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
really up to me to to decide. There, other folks have their favorites, but this is certainly my favorite right now. So we'll see what other folks say. Get a copy, and you can be the judge of this.
Well, why is this one your favorite?
Well, I think the mix, there are, and kind of the memoir element of Sign of Our Times. It touches on so many of the things that were brewing in American society, and because I had time to sit and think about them, whereas usually I might not, or I wouldn't have spent my focus like sitting in front of a screen. I'd get out and see people, but I couldn't do that. And so I had to be kind of a minor news hound of ephemera, of stuff around us that everybody could see, or most everybody could see. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I had my pulse on something, and maybe now I'm letting go of that.
Yeah. It's really interesting you said that, because I feel like for the pandemic, at least for me, it allowed me to get to the point where I try to find ways to separate myself from all the attachments in order to really seat myself into the work, or the writing that I'm trying to do. And in a way that could be really helpful, but in another way it could be not helpful, because you're not getting inspired. Like, it can be hard to get inspired, basically. Um, and I think this book is actually, like, to be honest, is really great, just in the sense of all the things that you're doing. Like, it could be really studied, like all the things that you're doing in it, as well as like just being a staple for our times. Um, so yeah, I will concur in that regard for sure. So the next thing I have is just something that you always go back to in your books, which is jazz. Jazz, jazz, jazz. What is it about jazz that you always find your way back to it in your life, in your books, in your writing?
Right. Well, one basic thing is it's democratic. It came out of um, this idea of democracy that we may have lost the trail of. But I love the creative and innovative and soulful nature of jazz, and was able to play with some folks that were so much greater than me. And so there's that. Of course, it's steeped in African American history, and it has roots in the African American experience, and then also stretches beyond. And so um, I don't know, when we look back at America, what will they say we have made? And jazz is one of those things.
Yeah.
And so I'm just attracted to the patterns and the energy of jazz, as well as the history behind how things were made and are still being made. I mean, there's some really great jazz musicians out of Kansas City right now who, if we're looking back 200 years later, will still be great, including Bobby Watson, who came up through the Art Blakey jazz project. Art Blakey was the drummer who took on younger musicians and helped make them great, and then let them go on their own paths. He did not, his lineup of personnel was always changing. But also, there are folks like Logan Richardson and Herman Mahari, who are now probably in their 30s, and are also equally great in a way. And there are many, many others. And so Kansas City is still a locus or mecca of great jazz. And it's starting to open up again when it comes to clubs, in terms of folks being able to go out and see something live. I haven't been. I wanted to go to some of the Charlie Parker ceremonies, because Bird would be 101 as of like 3 or 4 days ago, the 29th. But school has kept me very busy, and I want to keep on top of it. And I'll make it back, maybe a little later in a few days, or 102,
Yeah, for sure. I'd be remiss if I didn't say anything, but I still have those DVDs that you gave me, the jazz CDs you gave me, and I play them every now and then whenever I just want to zone out and try to get some writing done. But I also in this is still the improvised launch event, but I know in the Kansas City Boys Choir book that we did last year, I did a lot of research on just jazz in Kansas City. Um, People don't know, like a lot of the greats that people hear about came through Kansas City. Like you said, it was like the Mecca. Um, so I think you always do a great job of kind of spinning that wheel and reinventing it in your work, to always include those artists. Because to be honest, in a lot of pop culture, they don't get referenced enough. Um, they may get sampled in like some of your pop music, but you don't even know that they're in it. And so it's always great to see their name as well. So I have one more question, and then I'm actually going to open it up to attendees here to ask a few questions, and then we'll have one or two other things, and then we're going to close out here. So my last question I have for you in regards to this legacy segment that we're on now is, what do you want your legacy to be, as a writer, as an artist, as a person? And then you can answer it in that order.
Okay, I mean, hopefully this is changing. Meaning I get to keep growing. I
Yeah.
like that that joke that a person has asked. I think he's a saxophonist in his 90s. He says, "Why do you keep practicing an hour each day?" And he says, "Because I continue to make improvement." And I'm not to that place in my life in any way, but I do hope to keep, on that kind of path. But to be supportive, to my fellow writers, editors, publishers, folks of all sorts, students, and that includes, student writers among others, inspiring, write things that make people think and feel, and have them dig into things that they hadn't, explored before, and be a positive force. I want, one of my favorite memories with you is we played that Ellen Plum's gig, Ellen Plum City Bookstore, and we were, part of the feature and open mic that Lisa, my wife, and I hosted. But you and I got to share our poetry and music. You were on keys and I was on drums.
Yeah.
And I'll always remember that, when we're able to work together to inspire others. That's what it's about.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to Marsha Lawrence, and RIP to Ellen Plum's bookstore. Is it there still?
It's not.
Yeah, man.
So we had one of those magical moments before the beginning of the end.
Oh man, yeah, that was the spot, man. My whole undergrad there. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up to everyone else to ask some questions. I said I was going to limit it to about 5 at most, but we'll see how things are going. If anyone has more questions, we'll see how it's going. So feel free to use the raise your hand feature, or to go ahead and unmute yourself and chime in.
I think on the absence of titles thing, what occurs to me, Kevin, is that your poems are mostly so short anyway, and they just like capture a thing really quickly and get out. It's almost like haiku. It has a real similarity to haiku to me, and haiku do not have titles. So that's one thing I think of when I read a piece of yours without a title, is that it's a lot like reading a haiku.
Yeah, thanks. And Bob and I have, I've learned some jazz things from him because Bob Dean was a jazz bassist for years and years. And so I'm so glad I have some music friends on here too, as well as poets. You're also a great poet and writer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I was studying haiku during the time these started to come, and there's an experimental nature to them. And so, I'm still figuring them out, and I appreciate you thinking about them and analyzing them and giving me some ideas on why they are what they are.
Well, these days it's getting to where it seems like kind of like every other month at least there should be a Kevin Rabas book coming out somewhere.
Oh no. I do like to keep busy, and I like to share it, and the easiest way right now is through the books, but I guess there's Facebook too. But I don't know, I feel I for whatever reason I don't share that much on Facebook. I don't mind like seeing what others do, but I don't know. I like the more tangible conversation, if that makes sense. And I still talk on the phone with folks, and folks come to the front porch and that sort of thing. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a little behind on that, but it does keep this going. So yeah.
Has anybody else ever gotten an envelope full of Kevin's little cards with pictographs on them?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I do like to send letters, and there often are drawings of stick figures are part of it.
yeah. Speaking of sketches, yeah, the gesticulating figure is one of my favorite.
Right. I still love to send mail and get mail, and so yeah. I wish more people would find the joy in it, because you move slowly through the process, and with me sometimes several different mediums, a piece of paper, some 3x5 cards, etc. It's I mean if the letters are the thing that lasts, that's okay.
All right, do we have any other questions?
So I have a question. I only got to take one of your classes, the playwriting class, and I really enjoyed it. You taught me a lot about spontaneity and kind of just approaching a blank page with no expectations. And that's something I've taken pretty far, I think, in my own writing. But how often do you use your own sort of professor mind on yourself? Like how often do you come intentionally to the page, and how often do you come not intentionally, and just like, that makes sense?
Right, that's a really good question, and I hope you are still getting time to write. Yeah, I think maybe 1 out of 3 times do I put on the professor hat when I'm writing. Often it's more jazzy, and I let what happens happen on the page. But I do, when I go back to something and I'm revising it, I do think about it as a end product, or product in process. But probably 1 out of 3 times do I put on that analytical hat when I'm starting. And sometimes, you have to be intentional, like in a play, hopefully you're setting up what's going to happen next, and you've got this question folks need to know. And so sometimes I'll have to put that hat on and then take it off, and then let come what's going to come.
Big shout out to Josie. Kevin, she just came out with a book recently.
Congrats.
Josie, you should drop your link in here. We love the support. Any other questions we have? I have one question, but I want to make sure everyone else is able to get their questions in.
I don't really have a question, but I wondered, because I know him pretty well. But I wondered, is there a poem that from this collection that you really would like to share that did not fit into one of the categories of prompting from Ralvell that you'd like to share?
Right. There is one that I thought about for a second or two. Um, and it's a collaboration. We were talking about working with others. And so Carrie Moyer and I work on some things together. He's a writer in Empore who also what was or is a martial artist. He also rides gravel bikes and does a number of things, kind of somebody with many thoughts or talents. And so here is one that is about karate or taekwondo more specifically. And I wrote it with Carrie. So he told the story and then I went back and shaped it. And I also just kept the good parts as they came. So this is called There Was Something Wrong with That Red. And it's written with Carrie Moyer. This hot-tempered guy, Red, trapped my leg on a kick and punched my ankle to injure me. So the tournament comes and I'm all swollen up and I go through my forms for the judges, motion after motion, but I start limping towards the end and Master Hogan pulls me aside, says I can't compete, can't fight that night. So Red has to fight someone else, someone from some other dojo, some guy who's all sorts of fast and strong, who starts kicking the snot out of Red, who can't counter. But Red, with his rotten anger management problem, traps this guy's leg also and rustles him to the ground and starts kicking him in the head. This guy who had Red down 6 points to nothing. And so the ref steps in and calls it, has had enough of Red. And Master Hogan pulls our guy aside and sends him home from the dojo, suspends him. And before Red had been going full force at us, and we'd been pulling our punches, not going all out with him, but he refused to see it, wouldn't know. Plus Red had been going extra special hard on women and couldn't be trusted. There was something wrong with that Red. So that was one of the kind of collaborations and poems about, I guess, violence and toxic masculinity, all those things. And so it made it in because it fit.
So the last question I had, it actually regarded the titles for your a lot of your pieces, a lot of your books. You seem to always name them after family or friends.
Right.
Why is that? Because I know you have Lisa, and Elliot has a violin. Yeah, I remember that one. So why? I kind of viewed it as trying to help. Actually, I don't want to put anything on it. Why is it that you love to do that with your titles?
Right. And they're often either people I know or people I admire, like there's the Sonny Kinner one, or something related to music or jazz. You know, I in undergrad, I spent a lot of time in the dark room developing and printing photos. And I shot volleyball, soccer, football, the performing arts, etc. And I would spend most of my nights in there looking at something very small and trying to make it take shape. And after years of that, which was kind of my hobby / job, photography stuff, I started thinking, why am I taking pictures of these people? I don't even know them, and sometimes I don't even like them. And so why am I not taking pictures of people that I know and love and spending my time with that? And so that became the shift. And so I started writing about people I know. It never went away, this reporting element of, you know, taking heed of folks of the moment. But I kind of shifted and said, why not take pictures of people I know and love?
That's very similar to how I was thinking of it myself. So that's awesome. Okay, so it looks like we've rounded to the end. Now, the last kind of thing I want to do, as you all may have heard, we're doing an Ambitious Stories merch giveaway. We have some new merch we have, in addition to Kevin's new book being released, we have our Ambitious Stories Mass. So that's up for purchase on our website. We also have our new Be Ambitious journal. And so I actually really like this journal, and I was asking another writer about it earlier today, because there aren't any lines in it. They're just kind of dots. And so it kind of makes it so that you don't have to fit into the lines. Kevin can do all of his doodles.
I don't like lines either. I'm with you.
Yeah, and then you can turn it sideways as well as, going straight up and down if you want to. So, and it also has a great feel to it. So I really like the journal, actually. Obviously the mask comes in handy. So we had a giveaway where we made it so that if you liked, comment, or shared one of our social media posts, you're able to have your name thrown in, so you could possibly win either the journal, the mask, or Kevin's new book. And so we did have some folks who we were able to pull from. And so I'm going to do this. Let's see what order. I'll do the mask first. So the mask is going to go to someone named Annalisa Redmond. And so this person was on Instagram. And so I don't believe Annalisa is here. So I'll be able to reach out to that person. Again, all this stuff is available for purchase on our website, www.ambitiousstories.llc.com. I can type it in after this. Oh, awesome. That's why you have a wife. Put it in there. Okay, so that's the mask. Now for the journal, this one came from Facebook, and I believe this person is in here. It's Julie Sellers. Julie Sellers.
I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So you'll have this notebook. If you could just email me your address, wherever you would like for me to send it. I can have my address be put in here, or my email address be put in here, and I can have that shipped to you as soon as possible. So
Wonderful. Thank you.
yeah, of course. Thank you for being here. And then the last giveaway is Kevin's new book, Improvise, Poems and Sketches. And this one's going to go to Mr. Robert Dean. Mr. Robert Dean. So congratulations, Robert, Bob. You're going to get this book. And again, it sounds like Kevin may know you, so I may be able to get your address from Kevin, or as I said, you can email me as well, your address. I'll put it in here now. And then just for some closing remarks, I just, once again, I want to thank everybody for being on here. You did not have to spend the last hour of your life here with us. And so I really appreciate you all being here. Kevin, do you have any last words that you want to say to everyone?
Well, thank you all for coming. This is a really nice time. Thanks for listening and sharing in this poetic experience. Thanks to Ralvell for making this happen. And thanks for all the other folks who helped out too in smaller ways, like Dave, Eric, Lindsay Garcia, etc. And so thanks everybody for being a part of this launch. And I guess if I had a bottle of champagne, I could, smack it against the cabinets here or something, but we'll just let that go to your imagination.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much again. And don't forget to buy the book, Improvise, www.ambitiousstories.llc.com. You can also get the journal, the mask, and the Kansas City Boys Choir book if you want to purchase that as well. We have much more to come in the future, so keep supporting. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.